Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Today's question is, can I analyze the case of Melissa Turner? Just a reminder, I'm not diagnosing anybody in this video, only speculating about what could be happening in a situation like this. If you enjoy this video, please like it, subscribe to my channel, and consider supporting me on Patreon. I will put the link to Patreon in the description for this video. First, I'll look at the background of this case, move to the timeline of the crime, then offer my analysis. Melissa Rose Turner was born on November 25, 1992, and raised in North Carolina and Florida. Melissa struggled to regulate her intake of food and gained quite a bit of weight. This led to her being bullied in school. Eventually, she was able to modify her eating habits, and she lost over 100 pounds. Melissa earned an associate's degree in business and had a dream of becoming an actress. She worked as a webcam model and made money doing this, but eventually she transitioned to producing videos. Melissa liked dressing up in various costumes. She competed in cosplay competitions. In her videos, she was often dressed as various fictional characters. One theme that emerged from some of these videos was blood and gore. For example, Melissa was a big fan of Halloween. Many of Melissa's videos featured her in a state of clothing deprivation. This was her primary activity. Her content was for adults only. She made quite a bit of money doing this. In 2016, Melissa and her boyfriend opened a studio where Melissa and other webcam models could record videos. Not long after this, the relationship with her boyfriend ended, and Melissa closed this business. In April of 2017, using Tinder, Melissa connected with a man named Matthew Trussler. Melissa was 24 at this time, and Matthew was 23. Matthew grew up in Massachusetts and earned a college degree. He worked in a restaurant for a while, but then moved to the Tampa, Florida area. The couple became romantically involved and appeared to have an intense relationship. Melissa said that Matthew made her feel important. They eventually became engaged. In December of 2018, the couple purchased a 4-bedroom house in Riverview, Florida, which is not far from Tampa. Matthew was an active participant in the videos that Melissa was making. Melissa would later say that the relationship deteriorated because Matthew's drinking behavior became worse. He was consuming excessive quantities of alcohol. Now moving to the timeline of the crime. On October 18, 2019, Melissa and Matthew were in their house. At about 4 a.m., they had an argument which lasted for over an hour. During the course of that argument, Melissa stabbed Matthew in the back and likely caused other injuries to him. At 5:11 a.m., Matthew made his way through a window and ended up by the pool, where he died. Melissa called 911 at 8:45 a.m. and initially pretended she didn't know what happened to Matthew. She told the operator that they had consumed alcohol and she went to sleep. When she woke up, Matthew was outside the house and bloody. The police responded to Melissa's house. Here's what they found during their investigation. According to an electronic activity tracking device Matthew was wearing, Matthew's heart stopped beating over 4 hours before Melissa made the 911 call. Matthew had a cut on his right forearm, his chest, and his right shoulder. He also had a stab wound on his back. Later, it was determined that he actually died from the wound to his arm. The level of alcohol in his system was almost 5 times the legal limit for driving in Florida. Melissa had a pretty bad cut on her hand. The neighbor across the street from Melissa and Matthew had a video surveillance camera that also captured audio. Starting at about 4:31 a.m., Melissa could be heard yelling a variety of colorful phrases over the course of about 14 minutes. Here are some of the phrases she yelled, which were ostensibly directed at Matthew. You stay down. So blanking die. I hate you. Get up now. Get up. Get up. So blank arrogant. I hate you. Go blank yourself. Let's go. Blank you. No. And finally, Melissa said, what did I do? Melissa was interviewed at the police station for several hours. When the police started the interview, they did not tell Melissa about what the neighbor's video camera recorded. Here's what Melissa told the police. She and Matthew had spent the day drinking, completing chores, and taking care of their pets. She went to sleep at about 11 p.m. on a big chair in an office area on the first floor. When she woke up in the morning, she went upstairs to check on Matthew, but he wasn't there. She discovered him unresponsive on the patio and started CPR. This explains why there was blood on her. She had no idea what happened. She was positive that she had not been arguing with Matthew. To explain the cut on her right hand, Melissa said that she had grabbed broken glass. She didn't even notice the injury to her hand. Melissa had actually told the 911 operator about the injury, so clearly she did notice it at one point. The police asked her about an argument that occurred at about 4 a.m. Melissa suggested that she had no memory of any argument at 4 a.m. At this point, the police confronted her with the video, which led to a significant improvement in Melissa's memory. Melissa now remembered that there had been a terrible argument. The police started going through some of the different phrases that Melissa had yelled during that argument. Melissa tried to explain each one. She told Matthew to get up because he would fall over when he was drinking. She told him to stay down because she was angry that he fell over. The police once again brought up the cut on her hand. Melissa explained how it was actually caused by a knife, not broken glass. She grabbed the knife out of Matthew's hand, and the situation escalated from there. Melissa Turner was arrested for second-degree murder with a weapon. On February 14, 2022, she went on trial for murder. Her attorney argued that there was a history of abuse in the relationship between Melissa and Matthew, and she killed him in self-defense. Melissa testified during her trial. Here's a summary of what she said. Much of this is paraphrased. Matthew was an unstable romantic partner who mistreated her. He drank too much alcohol. He would become violent. He would punch the wall beside her head and push her. He would also cause harm to himself. Sometimes he exhibited mental health symptoms. For example, he would stare off at the corner and tell her there was a demon standing right there. Sometimes Matthew would speak in a different voice. It was terrifying. During their argument, Matthew had a smile on his face. He said, "What's the matter, little girl? Are you scared?" Because Matthew's not here anymore. Matthew retrieved his knife at some point during the argument. He would sometimes try to hurt himself. Melissa was trying to take the knife from him. This was a situation that occurred with some regularity. On this night, however, Matthew didn't want to give up the knife. They struggled over it, and Melissa managed to get it away from him. Matthew then grabbed her by the neck and tried to strangle her. Believing that Matthew was trying to kill her, Melissa stabbed him lightly in the back to stop him from strangling her. Stabbing is a word that is sometimes modified with various words, like horrible, frenzied, or vicious. It's not commonly modified with the word lightly. It's like Melissa was implying it was only a gentle, kind-hearted love stabbing. One of those little stabbings that serves to remind a person that somebody cares about them. The stabbing version of a love tap. Under Melissa's story, Melissa stabbed Matthew once in the back, but did not cause the cut to his arm. And again, this was the injury that caused his death. So one could argue that Melissa did not admit to causing Matthew's death. After stabbing Matthew, Melissa fell back and hit her head. She remembers taking a few steps, but then she passed out. The jury did not believe Melissa's self-defense claim. On February 18, 2022, Melissa was found guilty of murder in the second degree. A month later, she was sentenced to 20 and a half years in prison. She will be released no later than April 27, 2042, at the age of 49. Now moving to my analysis. Melissa continues to maintain her innocence, saying that she acted in self-defense. Was she actually guilty of murder? Let's take a look at the evidence both for and against the idea that Melissa was guilty of murder, starting with the inculpatory factors. Matthew did not have a history of violence. There was an argument between Melissa and Matthew, which involved a knife. Both Melissa and Matthew were cut by that knife, but Matthew ended up with more severe injuries, one of which led to his death. Melissa's injury to her hand was consistent with somebody using a knife to stab someone else. Melissa admitted that she stabbed Matthew in the back. Matthew was dead for several hours before Melissa called 911. Initially, Melissa lied to the investigators, saying she didn't know what happened. She also tried to hide the injury on her hand during the interrogation. Melissa eventually claimed that she hit her head and lost consciousness, but there was no evidence of that happening. Melissa's story about being strangled was first mentioned only a few days before trial. Melissa was captured on video saying many unkind things to Matthew, not the types of phrases associated with light stabbing. The couple had a camera recording in their house. This was different than the neighbor's camera. I guess it was supposed to be for security. It captured video that appeared to show Matthew in a calm state and not carrying a weapon. Melissa was hunched over and appeared to be angry. Moving to the exculpatory factors, Matthew was heavily intoxicated. People in this state are sometimes dangerous. Melissa told the 911 operator about the cut to her hand. So, at least initially, she did not try to hide that fact. The camera inside the couple's home recorded Melissa at about 8:35 a.m. Her hair was messy, as if she had just woken up. This is consistent with her story of being rendered unconscious. Matthew did not die from the stab wound to his back, rather from a cut to his arm. Perhaps Melissa did stab him, but he cut his own arm. Matthew never tried to call for help. When considering all the evidence, do I think that Melissa was guilty of second-degree murder? Yes, I think she was guilty in reality and guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. As far as escaping responsibility, Melissa put herself in a difficult position by waiting to call 911 and making graphic statements to Matthew during the incident. Melissa did not appear to be afraid of him. Rather, she was the aggressor. If Melissa had called 911 immediately and Matthew still died, I would have gone with manslaughter, but waiting made it look like she wanted him to die. Also, her deceptive behavior makes her look guilty. Moving to the last question, what do I think happened in this case? This is just a theory, my opinion. Years before meeting Matthew, Melissa gained quite a bit of weight. She was bullied, had difficulty attracting romantic partners, and did not feel good about herself. When Melissa lost weight, her circumstances changed drastically. She started receiving a lot of attention from men, and she was gratified by this. She sought to amplify this attention. Melissa started her webcam model and video production business and had moderate success. She became obsessed with money, and her mood became unpredictable. After becoming romantically involved with Matthew, Melissa included him in the adult content creation business. He was featured in many of the videos. They were business partners. Moving to the night of the murder, the police never measured Melissa's blood alcohol content, but it is reasonable to believe that she was drinking based on her own statements. She said that she was drinking. Matthew, of course, had been drinking heavily. The couple engaged in an argument, and a knife was introduced. It very well could have been Matthew who introduced it. The knife belonged to him. At some point during the argument, Melissa gained control of the knife and stabbed Matthew in the back and cut him in other places. Initially, she didn't realize that Matthew had been seriously wounded. Eventually, however, she knew that Matthew was in mortal danger. At this point, Melissa had a decision to make. If she called for help right away, Matthew may have lived, but Melissa would have been charged with assault or attempted murder. If Matthew died, there would only be one story coming out of the house, and that story would belong to Melissa. She made the decision to go for broke. She would allow Matthew to die and try to avoid the consequences of her behavior altogether, rather than accepting any responsibility. Melissa had been successful at manipulating men up to that point. She thought she could manipulate the police. The problem for Melissa is that she was not aware of the implications of the physical evidence, and she didn't realize the neighbor's camera recorded her yelling. She was simply unable to develop a suitable lie. Instead, she came up with this story that did not match the evidence. Melissa never bothered to check to see when Matthew actually died. Matthew was already dead for several hours when Melissa called 911. She could have called earlier without any risk of him talking. That would have looked a lot less suspicious. I think the bottom line with this murder is that Melissa could have escaped responsibility if she had been logical. But then again, if she was logical, she would not have attacked Matthew with a knife in the first place. Those are my thoughts in the case of Melissa Turner. Please put any opinions and thoughts in the comment section. They always generate an interesting dialogue. As always, I hope you found my analysis of this topic to be informative. Thanks for watching.